The first time my son called me mentally unfit, he wasn't angry. He was smiling. And somehow that hurt more. "Your Honor," he said confidently, adjusting his expensive suit jacket, "my father is 74 years old. He forgets things. He refuses medical advice. He isn't capable of making sound financial decisions anymore." Then my daughter-in-law leaned forward and added, "He can't even think for himself anymore." The courtroom grew quiet. I didn't say a word. I simply sat there in my navy blue sweater and listened to my own son describe me like I was a burden that needed legal paperwork attached to it. "My name is Harold Whitmore. I'm 74 years old, and until that Tuesday morning in Hamilton County Probate Court in Cincinnati, Ohio, I thought the worst thing that could happen in old age was losing your independence. I was wrong. The worst thing is discovering that the people you've loved most have been patiently waiting to take it from you. 3 years earlier, I buried my wife of 48 years, Margaret. Losing her changed me. It changes everyone. You don't spend nearly half a century sharing your morning coffee with someone without feeling their absence in every room after they're gone. Margaret always used to joke that I would never survive retirement because I needed projects to stay sane. She was right. After retiring from my accounting firm, I spent my days restoring antique clocks in my workshop. I volunteered twice a week at our local library and drove veterans to their medical appointments every Thursday morning. I wasn't rich by Cincinnati standards, but Margaret and I had been careful. We owned our home outright, maintained several investment accounts, and had enough saved to live comfortably. Then my son Daniel started visiting more often. At first I thought grief had simply brought us closer. "Dad," he'd say while helping me trim the hedges, "you shouldn't be living alone at your age." My daughter-in-law, Kimberly, always agreed. "We worry about you." Funny thing about manipulation, it usually introduces itself wearing concern. 6 months after Margaret passed away, Daniel began asking questions about my finances. Who managed my accounts? Had I considered assisted living? Was my will updated? At the time, I thought he was simply being responsible. I know better now. Then one evening, Kimberly said something that stuck with me. "You've done enough thinking for one lifetime, Harold. Let your family make things easier for you." I laughed at the time. I shouldn't have. Over the next year, they slowly tried convincing me to sell my house. "Dad, it's too much for one person. You'll be happier somewhere smaller." What if something happens and nobody finds you? Every conversation somehow led back to my home, my investments or my estate planning. Eventually, Daniel brought me paperwork, guardianship documents. He claimed they were just-in-case forms. I refused to sign them. That was the moment everything changed. 2 months later, I received official court papers. My own son had filed a petition declaring me mentally unfit to manage my affairs. He wanted legal control over my finances, property, and medical decisions. I sat in my kitchen staring at the documents for almost an hour before laughing quietly to myself. Margaret would have laughed too. She always said, "Harold, if anyone ever calls you incompetent, ask them to explain how an incompetent man managed 48 years of marriage and 40 years of business ownership." I hired an attorney the following morning. Her name was Patricia Green. The first thing she asked me was simple. "Mr. Whitmore, have you ever been diagnosed with dementia or cognitive decline?" "No." "Have you ever forgotten where you live?" "No." "Can you explain compound interest?" I smiled. "For quarterly or annual compounding?" She laughed. "Good. We're going to be just fine. Now I want to ask you something. If your own child took you to court for your money and property, would you forgive them someday? Comment never forgive if betrayal like this ends the relationship forever. Or comment family first if you believe children deserve second chances no matter what. The hearing took place 6 weeks later. Daniel arrived wearing a $3,000 suit. Kimberly carried a designer handbag that probably cost more than my first car. They smiled as if they had already won. Their attorney painted a heartbreaking picture of an elderly man incapable of caring for himself. "He leaves lights on occasionally." "I do. So does everyone. He forgets appointments. Once, last year, he refuses to accept assistance. Because I don't need assistance." Then Daniel stood up. "Your Honor, my father is just a mentally unfit old man." Old man. Interesting choice of words from someone whose college tuition I paid in full. Kimberly spoke next. "He can't even think for himself anymore." I remained silent. My attorney had advised me not to interrupt. Sometimes silence is more powerful than defense. The judge listened patiently for nearly an hour. Finally, she began asking questions. What evidence do you have of cognitive decline? Their attorney produced photographs. A burned casserole, an unpaid utility bill from 2 years earlier, a photograph of me asleep in my recliner. I almost laughed. Apparently, sleeping after lunch now qualifies as mental incompetence. Then something unexpected happened. The judge began reviewing my financial records. Every bill paid on time, investment accounts outperforming market averages, monthly charitable donations, volunteer schedules, tax filings completed without error. She looked increasingly confused. Finally, she removed her glasses and turned toward Daniel. The entire courtroom became silent. Then she asked one question. Mr. Whitmore, if your father is mentally incapable of managing his affairs, how did he discover and report the unauthorized withdrawals from his investment account 6 months ago? Silence. Absolute silence. Daniel's face immediately changed color. You see, there's one detail I haven't mentioned yet. 3 months before filing for guardianship, Daniel had convinced me to add him as an emergency contact on one of my investment accounts. Without my knowledge, he attempted 3 separate transfers totaling $47,000. My financial advisor flagged them immediately. I personally reported the activity and removed his access within 30 minutes. The judge continued. The court file states Mr. Whitmore identified the irregular transactions, contacted his financial institution, filed fraud documentation, and organized all supporting records himself. She paused. That sounds remarkably competent for someone who supposedly cannot think for himself. The courtroom remained completely silent. Kimberly stared at her lap. Their attorney suddenly became very interested in his legal pad. Then the judge asked her second question. Mr. Whitmore, are you attempting to establish guardianship because your father is mentally unfit, or because he refused to give you financial control voluntarily? Daniel opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Tell me honestly, what's worse? A stranger trying to steal from an elderly person or their own child doing it? Comment stranger or own child. I genuinely want to know what you think. The judge dismissed the petition immediately. But she wasn't finished. She referred the financial records to the appropriate authorities for further review. More importantly, she awarded all legal fees to Daniel. He ended up paying nearly $28,000 in court costs and attorney fees. 3 weeks later, I updated my estate plan, not out of anger, out of clarity. Daniel was removed entirely from every inheritance document. Instead, I established a charitable trust in Margaret's name benefiting local libraries and veterans organizations. My home will eventually become transitional housing for elderly veterans. Daniel received exactly $1, not because I wanted revenge, because $1 legally proves he wasn't forgotten. He was considered, and intentionally excluded. The last time I saw him was outside the courthouse parking lot. Dad, you're really going to destroy our relationship over this? I smiled sadly. No, son. You destroyed it when you asked a judge to take away my life because I wouldn't hand it over willingly. He didn't have an answer for that. Today, I'm 76 years old. I still restore antique clocks every Saturday morning. I still volunteer at the library, and I still pay my own bills. Sometimes people ask whether I regret removing my son from my will. I always give the same answer. No, because growing old isn't about losing your dignity. It's about protecting it. My son stood in court and told a judge that I couldn't think for myself. Ironically, the smartest decision I've ever made was proving him right about one thing. I no longer think for him either.